Hello, and welcome to another classic mystery brought to life. Tonight, step into the quiet English village of Lymstock, where someone is slipping vicious anonymous letters under every door, tearing reputations to shreds with a few strokes of poisoned ink. Friendships fracture, secrets bleed out, and soon the letters turn deadly. Only one gentle, white-haired visitor sees what everyone else has missed. This is Agatha Christie's The Moving Finger Mystery, retold. Let the venom begin. Chapter 1. The Venomous Missives. The village of Lymstock slumbered under a canopy of ancient oaks, its cobblestone lanes winding like lazy rivers through a patchwork of thatched cottages and blooming hedgerows. It was the sort of place where time moved at the pace of a grandfather clock, ticking away secrets in the quiet hours between church bells and market days. Late spring had painted the landscape in vibrant strokes, poppies nodding in the fields, bees droning symphonies over lavender borders. But beneath this idyllic veneer, a subtle rot was taking root, insidious as bindweed strangling a rose. Miss Jane Marple arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, her modest suitcase in hand, stepping off the bus with the unassuming grace of a sparrow alighting on a branch. She had come at the invitation of her old friends, the Calthrops, the vicar and his wife, whose rambling vicarage overlooked the village green. Aunt Jane, Megan Calthrop had written, "The air here is restorative, and we've missed your company since the war." Miss Marple, ever the observer of human nature, sensed an undercurrent in the letter, a plea veiled in politeness. As she walked the short distance to the vicarage, her sensible shoes crunching on gravel, she noted the villagers' furtive glances, a baker pausing mid-sweep, a postman lingering too long at a gate. Something was amiss in Lymstock, a discord humming just below the surface. The vicarage welcomed her with open arms and the aroma of fresh scones. Reverend Calthrop, a gentle soul with spectacles perpetually askew, clasped her hand warmly. "Miss Marple, what a delight. Megan's been baking all morning." His wife, a vivacious woman with a laugh like tinkling bells, enveloped her in a hug. "We've so much to catch up on, Jane. The village is abuzz, literally, with all these bees." But as they settled in the sunlit parlour, teacups steaming on a lace doily table, Miss Marple's sharp eyes caught the strain in Megan's smile, the way her fingers drummed an anxious rhythm on her saucer. Conversation flowed like the nearby stream, gossip about the new doctor, tales of the annual flower show, but Miss Marple steered it gently toward the unspoken. "You've a peaceful haven here," she remarked, sipping her Earl Grey. "Yet I sense a ripple in the pond. Letters, perhaps." The postman seemed rather burdened. The Calthrops exchanged a glance, the air thickening. Reverend Calthrop cleared his throat. "Ah, yes. Anonymous notes. Vile things, spreading rumors, like weeds. Accusations of infidelity, theft, even worse. The doctor's wife received one implying her child isn't her husband's. Shocking, really." Megan leaned in, her voice dropping. "We've had one too, claiming I'm involved with the organist. Utter nonsense, but it stings." Miss Marple nodded sympathetically, her mind already cataloguing details, the handwriting surely disguised, the paper common but traceable. "Poison pen letters," she murmured. "They erode trust like acid on stone. In my experience, they often mask deeper grievances, petty thefts, perhaps, disguised as harmless jests." As if summoned by her words, the afternoon post arrived with a thud through the letterbox. Megan fetched it, her hand steady, but her eyes wary. Among the bills and circulars lay a plain envelope, addressed in blocky script. "Another one," she whispered, slitting it open. The note inside was crude. Your piety hides a harlot's heart. The village knows your sins. But Miss Marple's gaze fixed on a smudge at the corner, a faint, rusty streak that looked suspiciously like blood. Careful, she cautioned, donning her reading glasses. This isn't ink. The parlor fell silent as she examined it under the window's light. The blood was tacky, not fully dried, and carried a faint metallic tang. Reverend Calthrop paled. Good heavens, is it real? Miss Marple shook her head slowly. Not blood, I think. Rust, perhaps, or dye meant to alarm. But look, the letters form a pattern. Her finger traced the words, revealing a subtle acrostic. The first letters spelled Vicar's Folly. A coded insult, she explained, pointing not at you, Megan, but perhaps at a village folly, a landmark, or a play on words. Inspired, they ventured out to the village green, where an ancient stone folly stood sentinel, overgrown with ivy. Miss Marple's keen sight spotted a loose brick at its base. Prying it free revealed a cache of pilfered items, a silver locket, a monogrammed handkerchief, a child's marble. Petty thefts, she confirmed, masked as pranks but linked to the letters. The writer steals trinkets to fuel rumors. Your locket, Megan, reported missing last week. Megan nodded, astonished. Yes, but how does this connect? Back at the vicarage, as shadows lengthened across the lawn, Miss Marple pieced it verbally over cucumber sandwiches. The thief pens letters to divert attention, spreading malice while hoarding proofs of sins. This bloody smear. Beetroot juice. I'd wager. Harmless, but escalating the threat. Reverend Calthrop fetched a sample from the kitchen. A quick test with vinegar confirmed it. Not blood at all, he marveled. You've saved us from panic, Jane. But the day's revelations deepened with a knock at the door. The local constable, hat in hand, reporting similar letters village-wide. Mrs. Symington at the manor got one, accusing her of poisoning her husband. Pure rot, but she's distraught. Miss Marple accompanied him to the manor, a grand edifice of red brick and climbing roses. Mrs. Symington, a frail woman with trembling hands, produced her note. Your remedies kill more than cure. Enclosed was a vial labelled arsenic, empty but ominous. In the manor's library, shelves groaning with leather-bound tomes, Miss Marple scrutinized the script. The same hand, disguised, but the loops betray a feminine touch. And this vial, from the apothecary, but relabeled. A visit to the shop confirmed. Sold to a veiled woman for rat poison, but the label mismatched. Not arsenic, the chemist assured, testing a residue. Just salt, harmless. Mrs. Symington sagged in relief. I thought myself cursed. As dusk painted the sky in lavender streaks, Miss Marple returned to the vicarage, the village lamps flickering to life like wary sentinels. Over supper, roast chicken with garden herbs, the Calthrops debriefed. You've linked the letters to thefts, Megan said, and debunked the threats. The parish can breathe easier. Miss Marple smiled faintly, her knitting needles resuming their click-clack. For now, yes, the vicar's wife stands exonerated, the blood mere ruse. Harmony tiptoes back. Yet as stars pricked the velvet night, Miss Marple lingered by her window, gazing at the folly's silhouette. The writer's malice simmered, a pot not yet boiled over, fatal intent lurking in the ink's flow, urging her vigilance into the morrow's whispers. The village slept, but her mind whirred, a guardian against the encroaching doom. Chapter 2. Whispers of Doom. The first light of dawn pierced the lace curtains of the vicarage guest room like tentative fingers, gilding the floral wallpaper in soft amber hues. and coaxing the scent of dew-kissed roses from the open window. Miss Jane Marple stirred from a light slumber, her dreams a mosaic of looping scripts and hidden caches, remnants of the previous day's discoveries. She rose with purposeful quiet, donning a simple cotton dress and pinning her brooch with care, a small pearl affair that caught the light like a watchful eye. Downstairs, the Calthrops were already astir, Reverend Calthrop poring over sermon notes at the breakfast table, Megan bustling with porridge and jam. "Aunt Jane," Megan greeted, her eyes brighter than the night before. "Your insights yesterday were a godsend. The parish buzzes with relief over that harmless blood." Miss Marple accepted a bowl, stirring in a dollop of cream thoughtfully. "Relief is fleeting, my dear. These letters are but the tip of a thornier vine, rooted in envy, perhaps, or deeper wounds from the war." Reverend Calthrop nodded gravely, adjusting his spectacles. "Indeed, I've heard murmurs at the pub, old feuds resurfacing like weeds after rain. The blacksmith claims his wife's been accused of hoarding ration coupons, pure fabrication, but it sows discord." Miss Marple's gaze sharpened. "Discord often blooms from personal soil. We must till the village's underbelly today, gently, of course." After breakfast, they ventured into Lymstock's heart, the sun climbing higher to bathe the green in a warm glow, villagers emerging like actors onto a stage. The post office stood sentinel at the crossroads, its red brick facade cheerful, but for the queue snaking out the door. Folk collecting mail with wary glances as if each envelope might bite. Miss Marple lingered outside, observing, a farmer in muddied boots muttering to a neighbor about slanderous scribbles, a young mother clutching her toddler while scanning a letter with furrowed brow. "See there," she whispered to Megan, the doctor's assistant, Miss Griffith. Her stride falters, a recipient, no doubt. They entered the bustling interior, counters cluttered with stamps and parcels, the air thick with the tang of ink and sealing wax. The postmistress, a stout woman with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetual squint, greeted them briskly. "Morning, Vicar. Miss Marple, is it? Heard you're visiting. Fine weather for it." Miss Marple smiled benignly. "Quite. Though these anonymous notes cast a cloud, you've seen many envelopes like them." The postmistress leaned in, her voice a conspiratorial hush. "Dozens, plain brown, local postmark. Slipped in after hours, I'd wager. One to the solicitor's wife claiming embezzlement. Vicious lies." As they chatted, a commotion erupted at the counter. Mrs. Baker, the homemaker from the edge of town, tore open an envelope with trembling hands, her face drained of colour, the paper fluttering to the floor. "No, it can't be," she gasped, swaying. Miss Marple stooped swiftly, retrieving the note. "Your bakes hide deadly secrets, poison for those you despise. The village tastes your malice." Mrs. Baker clutched her chest. "My pies at the fete. They're saying I harmed folk." Whispers rippled through the queue, eyes narrowing in suspicion. Miss Marple guided her to a bench outside, Megan fetching water from a nearby fountain. "Breathe easy, Mrs. Baker. These are barbs without sting, meant to wound the spirit." But as Mrs. Baker composed herself, she confessed a tangle of woes. Her husband's demobbed from the war with a limp and temper, neighbours jealous of their modest bakery success. "We've had thefts, flour sacks slit, ovens tampered, and now this." Miss Marple's mind whirred, linking it to the folly's cache. "Jealousy festers like yeast. Tell me of your rivals, the grocer, perhaps." Their path led to the grocer shop, a fragrant emporium of cheeses and spices, where Mr. Pye, A wiry man with a perpetual smirk weighed out sugar with flourish. Letters? I got one myself, accusing me of watering the milk. Poppycock. But his eyes shifted when Miss Marple probed wartime shortages. Everyone cut corners then. Rationing was brutal. Some held grudges over black market whispers. A customer, the village seamstress, chimed in. My note claimed I stitch secrets into hems, ridiculous, but it hurts business. The underbelly revealed, old alliances frayed, by scarcity, resentments bubbly like overboiled jam. By midday, the sun hung high, turning the lanes into warm corridors as Miss Marple and Megan visited the doctor's surgery, a modern addition to an old stone house, its waiting room sparse but for a few chairs and outdated magazines. Dr. Owen, a harried man with salt and pepper hair, ushered them in. These notes are poison indeed. Patients cancelling, fearing I've botched treatments. He showed a letter. Your prescriptions kill. Ask the widow, Blaine. Miss Marple recalled the name. A patient lost to influenza last winter. Grief twists facts, she soothed. But note the escalation. Deadly accusations now, not mere gossip. As they departed, a scream shattered the village calm. From the Baker cottage, smoke curling lazily from an open window, they hurried over, joining a gathering crowd. Inside, chaos. Mrs. Baker slumped over her kitchen table, a vial clutched in her hand, her body still and pale. The air reeked of bitter almonds, cyanide, unmistakable. A note lay beside her. The guilt consumes me. I can bear it no more. Reverend Calthrop, arriving breathless, pronounced her gone. Whispers erupted. Suicide. Those letters drove her to it. Miss Marple knelt by the body, her touch gentle as she examined the scene. The vial unlabeled, the note's ink fresh and smudged. Not suicide, she murmured to Megan. See the pen, uncapped, but no inkpot nearby, and her grip too loose for final convulsions. The constable arrived, notebook flapping. Clear case, despair from the slander. But Miss Marple pointed to the desk's edge, a faint indentation, as if another paper had been traced over. Forgery. The original perhaps discarded. The killer planted this to mimic despair. Suspicion swirled like the smoke from the forgotten kettle. Mr. Baker, returning from deliveries, collapsed in grief. She was fine this morning, baking as always. Miss Marple comforted him, probing softly. Enemies, rivals in trade. He shook his head. Only the usual, Mrs. Dane Calthrop, no relation to you, Vicar. Her jams outsell ours at fêtes. But his alibi, out all morning, corroborated by customers. Tracing the ink led to the stationer's shop, a quaint nook of quills and ledgers. The proprietor, an elderly man with ink-stained fingers, recalled selling a rare indigo bottle to a hooded figure yesterday. Paid in cash, didn't see the face. Miss Marple purchased a sample, comparing it under sunlight. Identical sheen. The forger's tool. Clears you, Mr. Baker. No such ink in your home. He sagged in relief. The crowd, dispersing with murmurs of doubt, turned to sympathy. As afternoon waned, golden light slanting through blossoming orchards, a fragile solace settled over Lymstock. The baker's neighbours offered condolences, the vicar planning a vigil. Megan linked arms with Miss Marple on the walk home. You've turned suicide to murder, Aunt Jane, and eased a husband's burden. Miss Marple patted her hand. One, whisper quelled, but doom echoes. The underbelly stirs. Homicide's shadow lengthens, drawing us into its embrace. The village green basked in twilight's hush, lamps flickering awake. Miss Marple's vigil began anew, her gaze on the horizon where secrets brood. The chapter's revelations, a bridge to darker quills ahead. Chapter 3. The killer's quill, midday sun filtered through the vicarage's mullioned windows like honeyed light through a stained glass chalice, casting warm patterns on the polished oak table where Miss Jane Marple orchestrated her subtle symphony of inquiry. The air hummed with the faint buzz of bees in the garden beyond, a deceptive serenade to the village's mounting unease. Lymstock's whispers had evolved into a low roar since Mrs. Baker's tragic end. Doors bolted earlier, conversations clipped at the edges, eyes darting like minnows evading a predator. Miss Marple, her knitting a constant companion in her lap, had spent the morning dispatching discreet invitations, notes on cream stationery, requesting a spot of tea and chatter with select villagers. "Subtlety, Megan," she advised her hostess as they prepared trays of cucumber sandwiches and Earl Grey. "The quill's venom spreads through tongues. We must loosen them with kindness." The first gathering unfolded in the vicarage parlour, a cosy nook of chintz armchairs and bookshelves groaning with theological tomes. Guests arrived in twos and threes. Miss Griffith, the doctor's efficient assistant, her spectacles perched like a bird on a branch. Mr. Pye, the grocer, his smirk softened by recent slander, and the seamstress, Mrs. Blade, her fingers calloused from endless stitching. Conversation meandered like a country lane, weather the upcoming fate, but Miss Marple steered it with the finesse of a helmsman navigating shoals. "Such trying times," she sighed, pouring tea with steady hands. "These letters, like invisible barbs, have any touched on financial woes. War left so many in straits." Miss Griffith adjusted her glasses, her voice crisp as starched linen. "Indeed, my brother's pension delayed, accused me of pilfering funds for it. Utter rot." Mr. Pye leaned in, his eyes narrowing. "Mine claimed I fiddle the scales, after all I've done for this village during shortages. But whispers say the solicitor Symington lost a bundle in bad investments post-war. His wife's notes hinted at ruin." Mrs. Blade nodded. Her needlework paused. Overheard at the shop, Symington arguing with the postmistress about delayed checks. "Financial ruin breeds desperation, doesn't it?" The confessions flowed, exposing a sinister alliance. Symington and the postmistress, bound by shared debts from a failed venture in wartime bonds. "They pooled resources," Miss Griffith confided, "but losses mounted. Now fingers point. Perhaps the letters deflect from their own scandals." Miss Marple filed it away, her knitting needles clicking a steady counterpoint. As the tea cooled, the gathering dispersed with lighter hearts, bonds tentatively knit amid shared vulnerabilities. Afternoon shadows lengthened across the green as Miss Marple ventured to the solicitor's manor, an imposing structure of ivy-clad stone where roses climbed like ambitious suitors. Mr. Symington greeted her at the door, his face a mask of professional courtesy etched with fatigue. "Miss Marple, a pleasure. Tea in the study." The room was a sanctum of leather-bound ledgers and polished brass, but tension hung like dust in the sunbeams. His wife, fragile as porcelain, joined them, her hands wringing a lace handkerchief. "These dreadful notes," she murmured. One accused Richard of embezzling client funds. Pure malice. Miss Marple sipped delicately. "Malice often stems from envy. Your alliances, perhaps with the post office." Symington stiffened, his pen tapping an erratic rhythm. "Business dealings, yes. Post-war investments soured. We shared the burden." But as conversation deepened, a servant burst in, face ashen. "Sir, the garden shed. Mr. Pye, he's—" They rushed out, the air thick with the scent of turned earth and blooming lilacs masking something fouler. The shed, nestled behind a trellis of honeysuckle, stood ajar. Inside, Mr. Pye lay crumpled amid sacks of fertilizer, his body rigid, foam-flecking, blue-tinged lips. An empty vial rolled nearby labeled opium derivative, a fatal overdose, swift and merciless. Bloody fingerprints smeared the doorframe, stark against the wood. "Looks like he struggled," Symington muttered. But Miss Marple knelt, her skirt brushing the dirt. Struggled or staged? These prints, bold, as if pressed deliberately, and the vial, fresh from the apothecary, but for what ailment? The constable arrived, his boots thudding. Suicide again, note in his pocket. The weight of lies crushes me. But Miss Marple examined the script, ink identical to the letters, the paper's watermark a local mill's. Forgery. See the hesitation in the loops, traced over another hand. Fingerprints pointed to a rival neighbor, the blacksmith Mr. Iron, whose grudge over a disputed fence was village law. His prints match, the constable declared, cuffing the burly man who protested innocence. "I was forging horseshoes all morning, not here." Miss Marple's intuition flared. The prints transferred, perhaps from a tool handled earlier. Tracing Iron's movements revealed a morning delivery to the manor, handling a gate latch Symington had repaired. Transferred evidence, she explained to the gathering crowd. The killer lifted prints to implicate. Iron's alibi held, witnessed at the forge by apprentices. Cleared, the constable conceded, releasing him with apologies, but deeper. The overdose tied to a blackmail scheme. Pye had discovered Symington's affair with a long-slain lover's widow, demanding hush money. The slain lover died in a hunting accident pre-war. Symington confessed under pressure. "I paid Pye to silence it, but murder, no." Tensions crescendoed at the vicarage fete that evening, tents fluttering like sails on the green, laughter mingling with the scent of fresh scones and cider. Miss Marple mingled, her presence a calming eddy in the whirl. But as she sampled a scone from Mrs. Blade's stall, a bitter undernote pricked her tongue, nightshade, subtle but deadly. "Stop," she cried, dashing the plate. The baker, wide-eyed, protested, "My recipe, unchanged." Examination revealed tainted berries in the mix, swapped in the kitchen by an unseen hand. The near-homicide rippled panic, but Miss Marple traced the berries to a wild patch near Iron's forge. Planted to frame him again, she deduced, vindicating the blacksmith who had been serving cider across the green. "Your hands clean, Mr. Iron, literally no berry stains." He sagged in relief, the crowd exhaling as trust flickered back. Symington approached, gratitude in his eyes. "You've woven safety from chaos, Miss Marple." As stars emerged like scattered diamonds, a brief tapestry of trust enveloped Lymstock, the fete continuing with subdued merriment, villagers clasping hands in solidarity. Back at the vicarage, Megan lit candles. "Aunt Jane, you've thwarted doom twice today." Miss Marple set her knitting aside, thrice if counting hearts mended. But the killer's quill sharpens, its final stroke awaits. The green lay hushed under moonlight, secrets stirring beneath. Miss Marple's watch continued, the chapter's perils navigated, forging onward with undimmed suspense. Chapter 4. Bloodied confessions. Twilight descended upon Lymstock like a velvet curtain drawn by an unseen hand, softening the sharp edges of the village green while deepening the shadows that clung to its ancient cottages. The air carried the earthy tang of impending rain, mingling with the faint aroma of wood smoke from chimneys awakening to the chill. Inside the vicarage, the parlour had transformed into an impromptu chamber of reckoning, its walls lined with flickering oil lamps that cast dancing silhouettes across faded wallpaper adorned with pastoral scenes, ironic vignettes of serenity amid the storm of human frailty. Miss Jane Marple had orchestrated this assembly with the subtlety of a conductor summoning her orchestra, her invitations phrased as a quiet evening of reflection, but laced with an undercurrent of urgency that none could ignore. The suspects arrived in a procession of unease. Dr. Owen, his once assured demeanor now frayed at the edges, his medical bag clutched like a talisman. The postmistress, Mrs. Cleet, her stout frame rigid, glasses perched low on her nose as if peering into an abyss. Mr. Symington, the solicitor, his tie askew and briefcase bulging with documents that promised revelations or ruin, and a handful of villagers touched by the letter's venom, their faces etched with a mix of curiosity and dread. Reverend and Mrs. Calthrop hosted with gracious poise, offering sherry from a crystal decanter that gleamed like captured starlight, though few partook, the atmosphere too thick for frivolity. Miss Marple took her place in a high-backed armchair by the fire, the flames crackling with a merry indifference to the gravity unfolding. "Dear friends," she began, her voice a gentle brook carving through stone, "we gather under this roof not to accuse but to illuminate. The firelight dances on our faces, revealing lines drawn by worry and want. Let us trace those lines back to their source, the quill that has drawn blood from hearts and homes alike." The room hushed, the only sound the soft patter of rain beginning against the panes, a rhythmic accompaniment to her words. She turned first to Dr. Owen, her blue eyes locking onto his with unblinking clarity. "Doctor, your hands heal, yet they tremble now. Tell us of the narcotics, the laudanum and morphine that vanish from your dispensary like mist in the morning." Owen's face drained of color, his bag slipping to the floor with a thud. "How?" he stammered, but under her gaze resistance melted. "An addiction, born from war's wounds, shell shock, they called it. I dosed myself to quiet the echoes, but supplies dwindled. I borrowed from stocks, just pinches at first." Gasps rippled. Mrs. Cleet's glasses fogged as she leaned forward. "You supplied the overdoses, for Pye and Baker." Owen shook his head vehemently, sweat beading on his brow. "No, I confess the thefts. To feed my own demon, but not murder. The vials were taken from my unlocked cabinet. I suspected a thief, but feared exposure." Miss Marple nodded, her knitting resuming its rhythmic click. "A demon indeed, Doctor, but one that blinds you to allies or accomplices." She produced a small ledger from her reticule, a pilfered prescription log, its pages stained with faint crimson smudges. These entries, forged, the ink mixed with blood to mimic haste. Whose pact sealed this? Eyes turned to Mrs. Cleet, who bristled like a cornered cat. "Absurd. I sought mail, not sins." But Miss Marple's tone remained serene. "Mail carries more than words, Mrs. Cleet. Your brother, slain in the trenches, a victim of a botched order from Symington's firm during the war. A bloody pact for revenge, perhaps. Financial ruin shared, grudges nursed over tea in your back room." Cleet's defiance cracked, her voice a hoarse whisper. "He died for nothing. A clerical error in supplies, Symington's oversight. We bonded over losses, my brother, his investments. We plotted to expose him, but letters, harmless barbs." The parlor tensed, rain lashing the windows like accusations. Symington rose, his briefcase snapping open. "Lies. My will. Altered, you say?" Miss Marple interjected smoothly. "Altered indeed, Mr. Symington. A forged codicil, concealing homicide motives from your pre-war days. A rival dispatched over disputed lands, ruled accident but reeking of intent." He paled, papers fluttering. That was investigated, cleared. But under her probing, confessions spilled. The will tampered to disinherit a nephew, the letters a diversion from his own embezzlements. Cleet helped, her access to mail for planting clues, but the killings, not us. As revelations cascaded, Miss Marple suggested a venture to the attic, a dim realm above, accessed by a narrow stair that groaned like reluctant bones under their weight. Lanterns swung, casting elongated shadows that writhed across beams festooned with cobwebs. In a forgotten corner, shrouded in dust sheets, stood a grotesque sentinel, a corpse-like dummy fashioned from wax and wire, its features a grotesque caricature of the village dead, eyes hollow, limbs articulated with pulleys connected to a hidden clockwork mechanism in the floor. "Behold the architect of nocturnal terrors," Miss Marple announced, winding a crank. The dummy convulsed, its arms flailing in macabre dance, whispers emanating from a concealed gramophone horn. Fragmented accusations echoing the letter's venom. Owen recoiled. "From my surgery props, stolen for demonstrations," Cleet pointed accusingly. "You rigged it to haunt Symington into confession." Owen's shoulders slumped, the fight draining from him. "Yes, I enabled the scheme, supplied the narcotics for the suicides, wired the dummy to simulate ghosts in gardens and sheds, deflecting blame. But the actual doses, not my hand. I provided, but didn't administer. Revenge for my own losses, patience lost to Symington's wartime greed." The constable, summoned earlier, stepped forward, his boots echoing on the attic boards. "Enabling murder's as good as doing it, Doctor." Handcuffs gleamed in the lantern light, clicking around Owen's wrists as confessions poured forth. The alliances fracture, each member's role in the web. "We sought justice," Owen murmured, "but it twisted into this." Downstairs, the parlor exhaled as he was led away, the rain easing to a drizzle that pattered like applause. Deceptions fractured like brittle china. Cleet embraced Symington in shared remorse. Their pact dissolved in tears. Villagers clasped hands, bonds reforged in the fire of truth. The Calthrops offered brandy, the ritual a balm for rattled nerves. "You've shattered the illusions, Aunt Jane," Megan whispered. The fire's glow warming faces anew. Miss Marple folded her knitting. Illusions cracked to reveal the core, panic quelled. For this eve, truths bleed but heal. As night enveloped Lymstock, stars piercing the cleared sky, a reluctant harmony settled. The attic's spectre banished, the village's wounds cauterized. Miss Marple retired to her room, the rain's whisper a lullaby, her mind already tracing the finger of fate to its inexorable point. Chapter 5. The Finger of Fate. The ancient oak at the heart of Lymstock's green stood as a timeless sentinel, its gnarled branches arching like the ribs of some forgotten cathedral. Leaves rustling in a gentle breeze that carried the faint, clean scent of rain-washed earth. Late afternoon, sunlight slanted through the canopy in golden shafts, dappling the grass in patterns that danced like elusive memories across the assembled faces. Miss Jane Marple had chosen this spot deliberately, a neutral ground under the open sky, where secrets could no longer hide in dim corners or behind drawn curtains. The village had exhaled its collective breath after the previous night's confessions, but a hush lingered, as if the very air awaited the final punctuation to this saga of ink and malice. The remnants of Lymstock's fractured circle gathered in a loose semicircle beneath the oak, Reverend and Mrs. Calthrop, their faces etched with quiet resolve. Mr. Symington, his solicitor's poise restored, but shadowed by the weight of exposed frailties. Mrs. Blade, the seamstress, her calloused fingers idle for once. Miss Griffith, spectacles glinting as she scanned the group with analytical precision, and a handful of villagers whose lives had been grazed by the letter's barbs, their postures a mix of anticipation and wariness. The constable stood sentinel at the periphery, his uniform a stark reminder of authority's impending grasp. Miss Marple arrived last, her steps measured across the dew-kissed turf, a simple straw hat shading her eyes, her reticule swinging gently like a pendulum marking time's inexorable march. "Dear ones," she began, her voice a serene melody weaving through the breeze's whisper, "we stand beneath this venerable oak, its roots delving deep into the soil of generations past, much like the roots of envy and greed that have poisoned our fair Lymstock. No more shadows today, only the clear light of understanding. Let us interlace the threads one final time, for the quill's venom has run its course." They settled on blankets spread across the grass, the earth firm and alive beneath them, birdsong a distant chorus underscoring her words. She commenced with the venomous missives, those insidious barbs that had pricked the village's heart. They began as whispers, rumors of infidelity, thefts disguised as follies, but escalated to deadly accusations, a smokescreen billowing to obscure the true intent, greed gnawing like a hidden worm in the apple of prosperity. Miss Griffith nodded slowly, her analytical mind aligning with the narrative. The letters pointed fingers everywhere but the source. Miss Marple inclined her head. Precisely, and the bloodied confessions of last eve. Envy's crimson stain, Dr. Owen's addiction a tool, wielded not by him alone, but by one who forged alliances in the shadows. Mr. Symington shifted, his briefcase at his side like a shield. Owen supplied the narcotics, yes, but for what end? Miss Marple's gaze softened, yet pierced. For an end rooted in a slain family's vendetta, Mr. Symington. Your pre-war oversights, documents misplaced, lives upended, echoed in the trenches, claiming lives like Mrs. Cleet's brother. But the architect, one who impersonated innocence, a facade as flawless as a stamped envelope. Eyes turned to the postmistress, who had slipped into the gathering uninvited, her stout form rigid, glasses reflecting the sun like shields. Mrs. Cleet bristled, her voice a sharp retort slicing the air. "Me, sorting mail doesn't make me a murderer." But Miss Marple continued undeterred, her tone a gentle current eroding stone. "Ah, but your quill did more than sort. It scripted doom. The overlooked quill, bearing traces of poison in its nib, harmless ink laced with nightshade residue, transferred from your hidden vials, found discarded in the folly's undergrowth where you penned your masterpieces." The group murmured, the breeze stirring leaves like pages turning in accusation. Cleet's defiance flared, her cheeks flushing like sealed wax. "Nonsense. I delivered the post, nothing more." Miss Marple produced the quill from her reticule, a slender feather, its tip stained faintly crimson. "This, retrieved this morning, from where you thought it buried. The poison, sourced from Owen's stocks, but administered by your hand in overdoses disguised as despair. Mrs. Baker's pies tainted not by her, but by berries you swapped. Mr. Pye's vial planted in his shed after a friendly visit." Symington gasped. "You, but our pact was for exposure, not death." The postmistress's mask cracked, her voice trembling like a faulty telegraph wire. "Exposure, insufficient. My brother's death, your clerical error, Symington, demanded more. The fortunes you hid, the wills you altered, I saw it all through the mail. Greed. Mine was justice twisted, seizing hidden assets through chaos. The letters sowed doubt, the deaths cleared paths to inheritance I claimed as proxy. Confessions spilled forth, a torrent unchecked. The slain lover's affair, a fabricated link to deepen vendettas. The dummy's haunts a diversion to mask her nocturnal tamperings. Owen enabled, but I struck the strokes, overdoses veiled as suicides, fortunes funneled to anonymous accounts. The constable stepped forward, his boots crunching gravel, handcuffs glinting in the sun. Mrs. Cleet, you're under arrest for the murders of Agnes Baker and Jeremiah Pye, plus forgery and blackmail. The click of metal echoed like a final period, Cleet's shoulders slumping as defiance dissolved into resignation. It was for him, my brother, but the quill, it consumed me too. As she was led away, her footsteps fading across the green, the village seemed to inhale fresh air. Malice purged like smoke dispersed by the breeze. Relief bloomed in the gathering. Symington extended a hand to Miss Griffith, their shared suspicions mended in mutual exoneration. Mrs. Blade embraced a neighbour, stitches of community reforged. The Calthrops offered prayers, their vicarage a beacon of renewal. Miss Marple, Reverend Calthrop marvelled, your perception, gentle as this oak shade, yet unyielding as its trunk. She smiled modestly, folding her hands. Merely threads observed, Reverend. Human nature weaves patterns if one watches the loom. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of rose and indigo, the group lingered under the oak, conversations turning from peril to plans, a memorial for the fallen, a fate reborn without fear. Megan linked arms with Miss Marple. Aunt Jane, you've sealed the wound. The sleuth gazed at the fading light. Sealed, yes, with no riddles to unravel further, only peace earned through truth's gentle triumph. Lymstock exhaled into evening, lamps flickering alive in windows like hopeful eyes. Miss Marple retired to the vicarage, the oak silhouette a guardian in the dusk, the mystery eternally interred in resolution's embrace.